Vor langer Zeit lebten die Menschen glücklich und zufrieden. Niemand bemerkte den Schatten, der sich langsam über ihnen ausbreitete. Die Dunkelheit trübte ihre Sinne und das Böse fraß sich tief in ihre Seelen. Vom Wahnsinn getrieben schmiedeten sie einen Pakt mit dem Teufel. Zu später Stunde kamen sie zusammen, um gemeinsam die Mächte der Finsternis mit ihrem sündigen Blut zu rufen. Sie zu erlösen von ihrer sterblichen Existenz, den Anbeginn einer neuen Welt vor Augen. Und so begab es sich, dass nach 100 Jahren das Böse wieder Fleisch geworden war. Als unsterbliches Geschöpf der Nacht kann es die Gestalt des Wolfs, der Fledermaus oder des Nebels annehmen. Es labt sich am Blut der Menschen. Dracula, der Fürst der Finsternis, Herr des Teufelsschlosses, ist auferstanden.
Pretty interesting. Also, hello, this is the Eye of the Swarm, and today, for this Halloween special, we're gonna have a look at Castlevania Rondo of Blood, my first real Castlevania game I have played. And one of the first things I will show you is this little demo fight with the Grim Reaper, or Death as he's actually called. And to be honest, this is actually a demo. I do not have any real control of this fight. And well, it's a pretty simple fight. You just slap him, and trust me, I will show the proper death fight later. So I'll just cut this up and we'll get into the actual opening of the game, and then we'll talk about the gameplay. Pretty nice intro anyway, as this footage obviously shows. This is the proper battle with Death, who I guess is our first prologue battle. But let's get into the actual first stage. Okay, let's get into the moveset. You have a basic whip attack, which is good against these skeletons, and like all Castlevania games, you just hit various torches, which has a lot of different variations, in order to get money and ammo, which is in the form of these hearts, as well as these pick-up things, like this knife, and that is a special ability, but there's also a regular version of the attack. And I'll show you the regular version now. Pretty simple, but I prefer the axe as a basic weapon. Not only for killing enemies here, but also its cool special move. it got the skeleton head. And it also is useful for flying enemies, both regular and bosses. There's also this time manipulator, which slows down time, very useful against fast creatures. But if you want to know what its special move is, well, it looks like this special ability allows you to attack any enemy when it is available. Pretty cool. And the next thing is, there's also this holy water, which is good enough for ground enemies, and its special attack does a real number on bosses, which I'll go into later. Anyway, we have this cross, which does a lot of damage, but it's mainly a glorified range attack on a horizontal thing, unlike the axe. The special ability of the cross allows you to hit multiple enemies and does some damage to bosses, though not all of them. Anyway, the next weapon is this magic book, or Bible, which is useful against those enemies like the Medusa heads, given how it spins around. However, like all the other sub-weapons, it does have a crash out feature, and this one is, well, not as impressive as the others, given how it actually is more of a projectile. Not that cool. Anyway, next would be this invincibility potion, which is like the star power from Mario. Other items like money bags and the all-important health heal thing, meat that is in the wall, are other things you can find. Though I do like the look of the 1-up. Also, if you're wondering what you get if you have no items equipped, well, that flame whip is pretty nice. Those are all the basic items for Richter, though there is this key. However, it is useless in both super moves and as, well, a basic item. And given how the first key you get is right after encountering this big monster, it might be useless. However, if you get past the pit filled with fishmen, you come to this room, you drive off Dracula's magician, and you unlock the first of the maidens, a special collectible that you can get, as well as a new character. And I'm gonna let this cutscene play for itself and talk afterwards.
I am Richter Belmont, vampire hunter. And you are?
My name's Maria Renard. I heard all about you from Annette. I came here to beat some bad men, but I got caught. My family are vampire hunters too, so I guess that means we should be friends now.
Sure, friends. But Maria, you're too young for this. You just let the big hunter here take care of that bad man, okay?
Oh, you don't know anything. I can handle this just fine.
After that, you can now play as Maria, who has a different playstyle compared to Richter Belmont here. Maria does not use typical weapons, instead using doves as her main feature, and several other animals as her sub-weapons, like these red birds for her basic, and the crash out for this one is a phoenix. See for yourself. We also have this turtle that allows you to sneak past enemies if you're not too keen on violence, though the super version basically gives you Gamera. See it right now. Though it doesn't work all the time. And yeah, there's also this cat that replaces the axe, funnily enough. And once he uses its Clash Out mode, you get a tiger. Though personally speaking, the one that replaces the cross, the dragon, is possibly my favorite, especially with its Crash Out ability. The normal one, you get a Wyvern type creature, but the Crash Out one, you get straight up a more traditional Chinese dragon, which is pretty cool. And those are the animal ones. Well, there is one exception, but replacing the Bible, we get a songbook. The base ability just gives you a little song that allows you to hurt areas in a straight line, and an upgraded one where you get the stopwatch's special ability. Speaking of which, now this boss is quite difficult on normal second one. However, with this bird item, yeah, the giant skull is nothing compared to that, which is quite surprising and pretty nice. Anyway, though that is just the regular version of the egg thing. The Crash Out item, well, a glorified range attack, which really isn't that impressive. Anyway, that is all the items in this game. And now let's get into some enemies. The first of the really basic enemies are the skeletons, which come in a nice variety. These are supposed to be 8 skeletons, I think, but there are other skeleton types, like regular skeletons shoot out bones. There's also these red ones that are a bit rarer, but cannot die. There's also these Egyptian ones with swords, which are quite annoying. There are also these bone snakes, the classic bone dragon things that shoot fire. These weird ones that go through walls, apparently. Big mini-boss, skeleton guy, I think he's supposed to be an ogre or something. And these ninja/pirate skeletons. They're nice. There's also these big skeletons with a flail. They're pretty cool. There's also this weird skeleton that shoots multiple bones. There's even a dog skeleton that comes with these knights. Along with all the skeletons, there are these skulls. There's the basic ones who appeared in one level. These flaming ones, which take more than one hit to get rid of. These skull spiders, guess that came out before Bionicle. And finally these water skulls. Along with all the skeletons, there are other enemies, like the zombies, and a few different types of bats and ravens. But the zombies only appear in one level, surprisingly enough, even though they're kind of famous with their dress and all that. And there are these gargoyles that appear in one level. Most of the other enemies are in one-shot levels, but they're still pretty cool. And as tempting as it would be to cover all the enemies, I think this video will drag on and will be quite boring, since most of them don't have that much differentiation. In fact, one of the levels you just deal with frogs. One of the things I find particularly notable and something special going forwards to the other Castlevania games is the bosses getting them their own special intros, like this werewolf howling at the moon, or the Minotaur climbing through this destroyed door. Both are pretty cool, but if I were to say what my favorite boss in the game is, well, in terms of fight-wise, I would have to say the Wyvern, because it was one of the only bosses that I beat in the first try, and it is a pretty cool-looking creature, to be honest with you guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Then again, all you have to do is use the axe and throw it at him and avoid its attacks, including one where it grabs you in the air. Though, if you're talking about it design-wise, I would have to say Dracula. To be more specific, his final form, though this form is possibly a bit more of a challenge, given you have to hit his head and those fireballs can be really devastating. Along with the other attack, which I can only describe as shooting out meteorites. They cannot be destroyed, it must be dodged. Anyway, now let's get on to the actual second phase of this fight.
Give me power!
This demon form actually is quite impressive and I'll use in my future work. And while I would like to show you the ending since, well, this is obviously the final boss, I do want to show some of my other favorite enemies and a little secret at the end. And the first creature up is Death. Unlike the prologue to the first Death fight, you fight him properly on top of this wrecked ship, which has a pretty cool mini-boss I'll show off later as well. But after dealing enough damage to the scythes, he'll go off, shoot some skulls at you, and if you can perfectly dodge all of them, you'll deal with the second phase. Not really the same as the Dracula one, but this one is just as cool. And Death even gets a cool brown robe as he fights you personally with his scythe, and it's pretty nice. Though the other major boss I want to talk about is actually something similar. Is actually something that first appeared in this game, and Death also has red blood for some reason. Anyway, let's move on to Shaft. The first part of the Shaft fight is you have to fight various monsters, specifically the major bosses from the first Castlevania or Castlevania 3, I don't know which. Anyway, the first one is this giant bat. After the bat, you fight this Gorgon, which I think is Medusa, which is pretty easy compared to the other one. The next is this mummy, possibly the hardest, mainly due to the platforming and bandage attack he does. Trust me, it is really hard to deal with. But after you defeat the mummy, you get a plate of food. Though you should probably get it up quick, since the next enemy is the Frankenstein monster, or Frank as he's affectionately called. And this creature, well, he's mainly just a physical brawler compared to the others, and shooting electricity. Anyway, after you defeat him, you go straight to Shaft. And Shaft is, well, he's a magician. I mean, he summoned all those monsters for a reason. He can also channel different magical spells, mainly fire and electricity, through those orbs, and he's quite an annoying pest. And once you think you have defeated him, that's right, Shaft comes back as a ghost. And he mainly summons bats in this form, as well as that weird goat demon thing, and the resurrected wyvern. Well, not really resurrected, but as some kind of undead creature. But in the end, he's not that bad. Surprisingly enough, the bridge leading up to him is more tough, but thanks to Marie's ability, which is shown here, you can get past this stupid bridge, and especially with all these bats. And it's quite a long one, I'm so glad for this little trick. And you can try and get the candles, but it's not worth it. Anyway, before we go on to the last boss I want to talk about, there is something else I must show you. In the bowels of the ship, you fight this weird portrait, and if you get struck by it, it's an instant kill. And just to see what Maria's version of it is, well, nice card. Now, there's actually a secret level you can get once you defeat Dracula and this last boss, that being Carmilla, one of the more famous female vampires. And if you have the right equipment, like with what Maria has now, this boss is a lot more easy, and it actually has an interesting phases. And you don't really fight Carmilla herself, you actually have to hit the skull she is riding. And once you defeat her, it turns out that girl, Lucy I think she is called, was actually a bunny-eared succubus. And is really acrobatic, but she doesn't really take that much damage. And once you defeat her, she gives you a lot of item stuff, which can be useful in future levels. Anyway, as much as I want to keep talking about it, unfortunately we're out of time. However, I do want to show this little thing I found in the options, showing different wallpaper, which I manually switched out to black, and possibly what I'm going to do next Halloween. That being reviewing Sympathy of the Night. And, well, there's a lot of unique options here if you want to play a more vintage Castlevania game. And, well, as tempting as it would be to show off the ending of this game, which there are two, given how Marie is in here, I should probably save that for Castlevania Sympathy of the Night, since, well, it is a direct sequel to this game anyway. Bye, and let's hope the Count is left sleeping. Oh yeah, like, comment, and subscribe and all that, and have a happy Halloween.